And a pleasant good evening to everybody tuning in here for this special In the Money Media show. Got several sponsors, including the U.S. Harness Writers Association, the Hamiltonian Society, and we're looking forward to discussing the 2023 Dan Patch Awards, which those awards will be given out in February in Florida, but the announcement of those awards is coming a lot sooner. This Saturday, December 30th, the Meadowlands simulcast pregame show will have the announcements of the 12 divisional winners. We'll find out on Dan Patch Night who will be named Pacer of the Year, Trotter of the Year, and Horse of the Year. And there's some competitive divisions to discuss this year. So we've got this special show to give you some of our thoughts, as all five of us on this panel tonight are voters in the Dan Patch Awards. We've all submitted our votes. We're going to defend those votes. Some people, like Michael Carter, will really have to defend going against Confederate for Horse of the Year. But we'll get into that as it goes. But first of all, to introduce my panelist, to my right, that's Barry Lefkowitz, who is the president of the U.S. Harness Writers Association. And Barry, welcome to your first roundtable with us.
Very glad to be here with you.
To his right, we got Michael Carter, who's showing off another one of the Dan Patch Award sponsors there, Caesars Entertainment. And Mike's been on a couple of shows with us here on The Money Media. But, Mike, this is the first time we get you on camera, first time to see your face on a roundtable.
Listen, I've got a face for radio, so maybe that's a good thing.
A couple of and Mike, by the way, the first vice president of the U.S. Harness Writers Association. Down below, we've got a member of the Canadian chapter of the U.S. Harness Writers Association and a regular contributor here. There's Garnett Barnsdale in his usual Bills attire.
Go Bills.
And with his lovely DRF harness background, we have Derek Givner of the DRF Harness, who is a member of the New York City chapter, which I will soon be joining, as I have an apartment moving to New Rochelle, New York in 2 weeks' time. So Derek will soon be chapter mates in New York City.
Nice. Another voice in the room. Hopefully a vocal voice.
Yeah. You're leading the Delaware Valley chapter, Edison?
Unfortunately, yes. Now, Barry is the president of U.S. Harness Writers Association and also the president of the Delaware Valley chapter, where I currently reside. So, so grateful for my time in Delaware Valley chapter for 3.5 years here. But unfortunately, I guess moving to New York City a little bit further away from home down here in the Mid-Atlantic. But either way, a lot of great awards for us to discuss. And Derek, I'm going to throw it back to you first and kind of ask our panelists, everybody kind of has their different priorities when it comes to these votings. Do you look at, do you look at the Breeders' Crown winner, put more weight in those races at the end of the year? Do you look at the whole body of work? I mean, I think everybody kind of has different opinions. So, Derek, from your perspective, how do you look at these divisional winners?
First, we'll do a good quick test here. Can everyone hear me well? Because I just switched to my AirPods. So
we can, Derek. We're good.
We can hear you.
Perfect. For me, I'm more statistical, I think, than perhaps most people. I tend to lean on the statistics and what the horses have done throughout the course of the year. And if I think the statistics are close, then I'll go with more of, my visual stuff, what I saw with my own two eyes, my belief is, so to speak, but I tend to lean heavy on statistics and how those went.
Garnett, I mean, we've got money earned throughout the year, number of wins, fastest miles. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could just dissect this.
Yeah, I like to think I'm similar to Derek, but when I was reviewing my ballot, my completed ballot before the show, and I think I got guilty in a couple of these cases of recency bias, perhaps this year. There's probably 3 or 4 divisions that are kind of toss-ups, I think. I think some of them are very clear who the winner should be. And I think in some of those, unfortunately, well, I mean, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but that's kind of just the way it went for me. But typically, I like to think more along the lines of what Derek just described.
Mike, what about for you?
I think a lot of us can get kind of caught up in the what have you done for me now sense. And Derek made a good point about, trying to encompass what they've done all year. And I know you were giving me a hard time sort of about my Horse of the Year selection, but, granted, Confederate had a great year. There were a lot of horses that had a really, really great season, just all in all throughout the entire season. And, like Derek said, I think you just have to take a look at the whole picture. And when you're voting for these awards, just, decide, okay, maybe even a head-to-head matchups. I mean, Carl and TCI kind of hooked up a couple of times as well. And a lot of voters, kind of took that into consideration as well.
Barry, what about for you?
Well, it's always hard to say. I think it's a body of work in a lot of respects. You can get caught in to what have you done for me lately, but in a sense, that doesn't tell the whole story. So I think you have to look at the whole picture.
Yeah, I'd like to think in my analysis that I look at the big picture, but I will say in some of these divisions, and obviously we'll get into discussion of those, but there's some divisions where I really feel like some of the recency bias really did kind of play into some of my decisions there, and I think we'll see that in some of the divisions we discuss. In fact, Mark Anderson is listening in on Facebook there, and thanks us all for coming on. Mark, always a great listener throughout the whole season here for these roundtables, and he's got an opinion there on that 2-year-old colt trot division. He's taking Carl over TCI. That's one of those divisions we'll jump into later that I'm sure opinions on this panel of ways we voted, but we're going to go our way, starting with the Pacers, 2-year-old Pacers, work our way through the older Pacers, go through the Trotters, then we'll discuss the Pacer of the Year, Trotter of the Year, a little bit of discussion of Horse of the Year, and there's also a whole bunch of human awards if we get a chance at the end. Maybe we'll cut into if we have a couple extra minutes, but let's get started. The 2-year-old Colt and Gelding Pacers. Michael Carter, let's start with you. Captain Albano, 7 wins this year from the 9 starts, over $600,000 in the, or $445,000 in the bank. PA Sire Stakes champion, but if we're going to discuss recency, does finish second in the Breeders' Crown Final. Gem Quality, maybe the next biggest contender, 4 wins on the year, $438,000, and does have that Breeders' Crown win to his record most recently.
You know, this was a sort of a tougher kind of division for me, right? Because, you know, you've got a horse like Gem Quality, who is a solid contender. But, you know, Captain Albano, from a year-long standpoint, I mean, didn't miss the board at all, was a winner in the Breeders' Crown Elimination, won down in Lexington, won a Pennsylvania Sire Stakes final, and to me, did a little bit of everything throughout the year, right? You won at just about every level. Granted, you know, unfortunately, he lost the Breeders' Crown final, but he didn't, didn't embarrass himself. Finished second, only beaten a length and a quarter. And you know, Gem Quality is a solid horse. So, you know, to me, this was my selection based on a full year's body of work. Was no worse than second throughout the entire season.
Barry,
what about your selection in this division?
Well, I kind of agree with Michael. I'm biased, I guess, with Captain Albano because I love rubber bands around a beard. If you remember Captain Lou Albano from the old wrestling days, I guess that's how the horse was named, perhaps. You know, again, you know, he was second in the Breeders' Crown, but overall won the Pennsylvania Sire Stakes final, won the Bluegrass, won the International Stallion Stake. I think overall, you know, hitting the board in every one of his starts, $445,000 in the bank. I don't hold his loss against him in the Breeders' Crown. So he was my choice for a 2-year-old Colt Pacer of the Year.
Garnett, Captain's Quarters, Clever Cody, a couple of Canadian connections. They're on this list of the top money earners for the division. Do we get a dissenting vote from you, or is it Captain Albano?
No dissent. This one was pretty easy for me. I mean, 7 for 9. I think Gem Quality got a pretty lucky trip to beat him in the Breeders' Crown inside the whole way. Got a clear lane in the stretch. Not to take anything away from the horse, did what he had to do, right? But Captain Albano did all the work in that race. That being said, and I'm going to need you guys to help me out a little bit here. I think maybe the main contender to any of these horses is going to be that Tony Alagna colt that was winning at the end of the year. I can't remember his name right now.
Better is nice?
Yeah. The one that was 0 for the year and then won like 2 or 3 in a row, including a big stake at the end of the year. Is that him?
I believe so, yep. Derek, do we get a vote for you from Captain Albano or somewhere else?
Yeah, I went Captain Albano too. I mean, I think statistically, you know, just looking at the numbers, forgetting about what races they may or may not have won, I think it's pretty close. You know, so this is one of those categories where I think it does come down to, you know, what I saw and what I felt was the better horse. And I felt that throughout the course of the year, Captain Albano was the better horse. Did he win the Breeders' Crown? No, but I don't think you have to win the Breeders' Crown to win this award. And I think he did enough throughout the course of his races.
Although I said I feel like recency is important to me, but this is one of the divisions. Can't say I spent too much time thinking about gem quality. You look at the whole body of work for the year. Captain Albano was a pretty clear selection for me, and well, based on our group of 5 panelists, we might have a pretty good idea who may end up winning that division. But one that I think is a lot more competitive is what we'll go to next. That's the 2-year-old Philly Pacers, and the Garnett. I personally have it down to 4. Maybe there's even a 5th one if you want to include It's a Love Thing. But of course, my girl EJ is the Breeders' Crown winner. Does lose the 3 Diamonds final, though. Made nearly $700,000 this year. Caviar Bell came back to win the last race of the year there in the 3 Diamonds. 7 wins this year, over $450,000 banked. You have Passline, who was the Ontario Sire Stakes Super Final winner. Finished second in that Breeders' Crown final. Made over $500,000 this year. And, of course, you can't forget about Geocentric, who was a perfect 9 for 9 this year, but did end up finishing 7th at 2-5 in the Breeders' Crown final. So with all that said, Garnett, how did you dissect this tricky division?
Yeah, it's it's tough. Like, I mean, I could have a Canadian bias and go for Passline, but I didn't. But you really can't take much away from her, right? I mean, she won all those races in Canada, comes second in the Breeders' Crown, pretty good effort. I went to my girl EJ just from what I saw at the end of the year. She kind of tipped her hand in her Breeders' Crown elimination when she powered home in 25-3, and she was a really good bet at $9 in the final in hindsight, and I didn't bet her, which I feel kind of stupid about. But I mean, that was a very powerful win there, and it came up a little bit short to a very sharp Caviar Bell, who also, she was really good early in the year. Kind of went off form a little bit for 4 or 5 starts, and then got really good again at the end of the year again. So I went to my girl EJ, but man, this one could be very tight, the voting, I think.
So that is a vote for my girl EJ. Derek, where will you go?
I think the voting will be very tight in this category, and I think it comes down to my girl EJ and Geocentric. For me, I struggled a lot with this category because if going into the Breeders' Crown, I was probably thinking Geocentric. That's the one you're going to go with, and then obviously she didn't have her best performance that day. But really, when I poured over the numbers, what it came down for is I want to give a benefit of the doubt more to the horse that raced on the Grand Circuit. And I felt like if you look at what Geocentric did throughout the body of her work, it was mostly Sire Stakes stuff. And when she came to the Breeders' Crown, she didn't show up that day. And unfortunately, that was the most important race of her year. Winning Sire Stakes finals are great, but I'm not going to consider just Sire Stakes finals as Grand Circuit races, regardless of how much they go for. To me, the Grand Circuit is an open race. That's where everyone can race. Those are the ones you got to win more of. And my girl EJ has a better body of work in those races than Geocentric.
So that's 2 votes for my girl EJ. Barry, do we make it 3, or are you going to go elsewhere?
I happen to agree with Derek that the proliferation of the Sire Stakes, especially in Kentucky, where you have dual eligibles, and in some cases you can have triple eligibles in Sire Stakes, leads people to say, hey, I'm going to give up the Grand Circuit races and go for the Sire Stakes. And I don't think that that's exceptionally fair, even though the money is there, but you're restricted in a lot of respects. However, I watched Geocentric race quite a bit. I was very, very impressed with her throughout the season. Disappointed in her Breeders' Crown final, but ultimately, and again, in a very close toss-up, I went with Geocentric.
2 votes for my girl EJ, a vote for Geocentric. Michael Carter?
I voted for Geocentric in this division. This was, like Derek and Garnett, everybody has said, I mean, this was a really, really tough division. But for me, Geocentric defeated my girl EJ not once but twice. Once in the British Crown elimination and once at the Pennsylvania Sire Stakes final back in September. And horses are not machines, and I think we've all learned that throughout the years. Horses turn up bad for one reason or another, And I think Geocentric just had an off night. Unfortunately, it was on a night where she needed to prove herself. However, I think, having won 9 of her 10 starts this year and defeating my girl EJ not once but twice, I think she got the slight nod.
So for me, it was really difficult as well, as we've all obviously alluded to. At the end of the day, I did vote my girl EJ as well. The nearly $700,000, 5 wins this year from the 13 starts. Obviously, the Breeders' Crown win was a big part of it, but for Geocentric, I don't know. For me, and I'm not saying that it would have. I mean, I obviously would have had to look at it closer if it happened. But Garnett, I guess I'll ask you, since you also voted for my girl EJ with me, who was close to Geocentric. If Geocentric would have finished second, say, in the Breeders' Crown or put in a little better effort than the 7th, would that have potentially made this decision tougher for you, or is the loss really what you focused on?
Maybe. I mean, listen, if she was second beating a nose to my girl EJ, I would have looked a little closer and I would have found those losses that Mike just mentioned to Geocentric, which I didn't notice initially. I guess it would depend, but that one kind of just sticks out, that 7th beating 9 where she's up by 2 and really had no fight in the last quarter. Something went amiss, I think, with her that day. But I mean, we're basing these votes on results, right? And she didn't get the results. So,
and I'm not putting a lot of weight into elimination races. I really don't care who beats who in an elimination race.
That's fair.
Let's face it, a lot of these horses aren't going all out in these elimination races. I'm putting my weight in the finals of these major stakes races. That's where most of my weight's going. And if you won sire stakes along the way, I'm going to take that into consideration. But I want to put weight into these big finals where I know everyone's showing up with their best effort if they have it.
Yeah, I would say the elimination maybe didn't heavily factor in my decision, obviously, with my girl EJ losing the Geocentric in that elimination. But the Pocono race was pretty significant there in the PA Sire Stakes. Geocentric took care of business that day. But, see, that's where I say, I don't know, I think my decision would have made even tougher if these two were at least closer, if Geocentric was more competitive in that Breeders' Crown final. But again, maybe this is a little bit of the recency bias, but my girl EJ towards the end of the year, I think really took those steps forward she needed, and that's the way I sided. But I suspect it'll be a close one. Mark Anderson on Facebook chiming in saying he'll take Geocentric over my girl EJ, so counting that as a 6th opinion, that's a 3-3 here. So this could be a very interesting division as we'll look forward to Saturday night at the Meadowlands on their pregame show. Again, 5:20 p.m. the start time Saturday night at the Meadowlands. We'll find out who is the winner of that division as well as these other 11 divisions. And we'll move on to one of those other 11 divisions now. We'll go to the 3-year-old Colt and Gelding Pacers. And, we all know what Confederate did this year. The $1.6 million in the bank, 13 wins from the 15 starts. It's my show, to be fair, does deserve plenty of credit for nearly making $1.1 million this year. Does win the North America Cup, does win the Little Brown Jug, but Derek, I suspect probably not too much discussion on this division.
Yeah, It's My Show had a very good season. Confederate had maybe an all-time great season. I mean, when you look at the body of work and the races he won and the way he was able to win these races, there isn't a lot to talk about here. Confederate is the best 3-year-old colt pacer in the country for 2023. That's it.
Well, Mike, I suspect you're going to lean the same way, but for Confederate, we talk about recency. To be fair, that last race for him, unfortunately, wasn't too spectacular, but FanDuel Championship against Olders, last career start, I suppose not something we'll hold too much against him going to the breeding shed.
Listen, to me, you can't hold that race against him from a divisional standpoint, right? If you're going to vote against him for that race in the division, I don't think I would ever tell anybody they were wrong for voting, one way or another. But hang on. But I'm gonna say right now,
I'm gonna tell you later in the show you're wrong.
Yeah, but I'm gonna say right now, if you're voting against him because of the FanDuel race for 3-year-old Colt and Gelding Pacer, you're dead wrong. And it was an unfortunate performance that night. Things happen one way or another. But as Derek's alluded to, the entire body of work all season long, there's no doubt in my mind that Confederate deserves to be a 3-year-old Colt and Gelding Pacer.
Barry, and turning to you, I suspect we're going to find another Confederate vote.
Well, I don't think there's much of a question here. It's My Show put in a very, very, very good season. Won a couple of big races, but when it came down to it, Confederate was clearly the best of this division. Won every dance. I mean, you can't even take into consideration the last race, against the older horses, but just a remarkable campaign.
Well, Garnett knows that there's plenty of times this year in races I tried to beat Confederate and thought he was going to lose one eventually. Obviously, it did happen in the FanDuel. But that said, as much as I loved It's My Show, Confederate obviously has to be the vote for me. And Garnett, I'm assuming we're going to find a clean sweep.
Yeah, and I don't think you can hold the FanDuel against him. You look at this race, he was forced wide. Some might argue intentionally at the start of the race. And then to come first over in the final three quarters in 122 on November 25th, he would have to go 121 to beat older horses. He would have to be the greatest horse that ever lived to do that. So I don't hold that race against him in any vote, really.
Well, there's another division where we're going to find a unanimous vote from this panel for Confederate. And, it might not be unanimous overall, but I suspect there won't be too many dissenting Confederate votes for this division. The 3-year-old Philly Pacers up next, and we'll go to Garnett Barnsdale first because we'll figure he'll show some Canadian love. Sylvia Hanover wins the Breeders' Crown Final, wins the Glen Garnsey, was really working forward there at the end of the year. 10 wins from the 13 starts, $767,000 banked, but Twinbee Joe Fresh, the FanDuel winner, won the Matron, won also a division in the Glen Garnsey, Kentucky Sire Stakes winner, had a win over Sylvia Hanover throughout the season, 11 wins, $842,000 in the bank. But Garnett, I'm expecting we're going to see a Sylvia vote from you.
Yeah, nobody can make a strong case that she's not the winner here. She won. She lost 3 races. 2 of them were races she was probably not. They probably weren't totally interested in winning. They were purpose races, and the third one she lost was when she had a mishap, and she lost to Twinbee Joe Fresh there. But she handled her. She handled her in 2 other starts, and her race in the Breeders' Crown was just phenomenal. Twinbee Joe Fresh had a great year. We might see some epic battles between these 2 next year. Maybe they'll be on equal footing on the racetrack, but I can't see how anybody could argue that Twinbee Joe Fresh had a better year than Sylvia.
Well, Derek, you said you like to look at your analytics. One more win for Twinbee Joe Fresh, $80,000 extra dollars. Do those factors come into play here, or is it more of the big race winners?
I mean, the numbers come into play when there's big gaps. The gaps between these 2 horses, they're very, very close. I mean, you can make the case that Sylvia has a better win percentage, 10 for 13 versus 11 for 17. Earnings wise, it's pretty close. Best time is close. I mean, they're much closer on paper than they are in my head. Because in my head, Sylvia Hanover was far and away the best 3-0 Philly Pacer. It wasn't even close. So, I mean, that's my eye test of having watched all these races, and seeing them race time and time again. Sylvia Hanover was the better 3-0 Philly, but statistically they're really close. So I could see why someone would take a shot with Twinbee Joe Fresh and say, "Listen, I'm looking at the numbers, and the numbers say she's better." I could see why someone would do that, but I think if you go back and watch every single race that these horses were in, I think you'll find that Sylvia was the more appealing horse of the 2.
Barry, for me, it was kind of interesting. I was thinking about if I had to vote after like Sun Stakes Day, when Sylvia breaks in the Lynch, Twinbee Joe Fresh wins so easily. I think those weeks preceding, that's where Twinbee Joe Fresh really got her momentum, really built her bankroll. But then I think Sylvia coming right back at the end of the season with the Bluegrass win, with the Glen Garnsey win, with the Breeders' Crown Final win, that's what puts Sylvia over the top for me. But got to be honest, if you made me vote 2 or 3 months ago, I might have been convinced to flip, possibly.
I'll tell you, these are 2 great fillies. Okay, I have a sentimental weakness for these 2. They were like 2 of the best in my selections as yearlings. Okay, early on, I know a lot of knowledgeable people thought that Twinbee Joe Fresh would be the better horse. As it turned out, that's not the case. Sylvia Hanover, except for the mishap in the Lynch, did everything that was really asked of her. Same with Twinbee Joe Fresh. I mean, Twin B Joe Fresh won the FanDuel, albeit a fairly weak mare pace division, but Sylvia Hanover clearly was the better horse. But two great fillies from this crop that should be recognized.
Well, Mike, regardless of which way you vote, if you vote for Sylvia, we got a clean sweep here. I still feel like when we get to the actual votes on Saturday night, I feel like this division has to be closer than maybe this panel's indicating. But I don't know, are we going to get a vote for Twin B Joe Fresh out of you, Mike, or is it actually a sweep for Sylvia?
This is the one where Garnett's going to give me a little bit of a hard time, I think. I did vote for Twin B Joe Fresh. I know that comes as a shock to everybody, right? Garnett saw my vote like from 20 minutes after the materials were sent out. But no, here's the thing, and maybe it was a little bit of what have you done for me lately? But Twin B Joe Fresh winning the FanDuel to me is part of the reason I voted for her. Now, granted, it was a 5-horse field. Was it some of the best fillies or mares in the division? Maybe, maybe not. She did rebound off of that Breeders' Crown win with a matron victory. So for me, Twin B Joe Fresh had a solid of enough season that, she got the nod from me.
Well, based on this group, it appears it's 80-20 Sylvia. I don't know. I suspect the actual voting is going to be a bit tighter than that. But, Mike, no concern for me for that vote. I think that's a fair vote, and I think there'll be plenty of others that'll follow you that way. I think that could be a closer-ish division in the awards here. But next we'll go to the aged pacer. So Allywag Hanover, if we're talking recency, does win the FanDuel, defeating By the Missile, defeats Tattoo Artist, defeats Confederate, and had 4 wins on the year, totaling over $560,000. Of course, By the Missile, nearly the millionaire on the season, 11 wins, includes the Breeders' Crown win, does finish second in the FanDuel to Allywag, and then Tattoo Artist made $960,000 this year with 9 wins, including a second in the Potomac Pace, a third in the Breeders' Crown, wins the Dayton Derby, wins the Canadian Pacing Derby. So a lot of different directions possibly go in the aged pacing division. So, Barry, which way did you end up going?
Well, again, this is a tough division because, horses race all year long, and it is exceptionally hard to keep a horse fresh for the entire season. You have horses, Covered Bridge, 35 starts. Tattoo Artist, 24 starts. But at the end of the day, I thought the consistency of By the Missile gets my nod for this division. Not to take anything away from any of the other horses, because they're warriors. I mean, they're out there from the Borgata to the FanDuel.
Mike?
All right. So for me, it's By the Missile. To me, you have to throw out those 2 New Jersey maturity races. Those don't even count. They weren't even close to, being considered for me. When I talked to trainer Ron Burke before the Myron Charner President's Pace at Northfield, I know a lot of people were worried after the Jurdovinsky, sickness or whatever, but, he said that his vet told him, like, look, he's just 4, he's a gelding. There's plenty of time for him to kind of bounce back and rebound. And boy, did he ever rebound with the powerful performance in the Sam McKee Memorial. We saw him here in the Myron Charner President's Pace. He was good in the Aria. And then he reeled off, 4 straight victories before finishing second, just beat a neck in the FanDuel Championship. To me, this division goes through By the Missile. And, there's really not too much argument coming from me.
Derek?
I think Tattoo Artist deserves to be in the conversation 100%. The earnings are pretty close with By the Missile. For me, the separator really was Tattoo Artist only had 9 wins in 24 starts versus 11 wins in 16 starts. I think that was, the big separator for me is I want to see a horse that, races throughout the season, but, does well consistently throughout the season. And Tattoo Artist really tailed off at the end. If he would have won the FanDuel or if he would have won the Breeders' Crown, maybe if you would have, given By the Missile a fight in the Potomac, any of those would have been, at least something where you can hang your hat on. Maybe Tattoo Artist deserves the nod, but I think By the Missile clearly had the best season from start to finish and produced the best resume.
Gardnett, I voted for By the Missile, but I will say, if you would have asked me after the McKee Memorial on Hambletonian Day at the Meadowlands, I would have thought it would have been a lot easier of a win for By the Missile in the end. It got a little rocky there for a little bit, but I think he did enough in the end, despite falling 14,000 short of $1 million on the year to earn the nod here.
Yeah, and he got really good. In his pacing derby elimination, he was so good, winning by 8 in the 147-3 that I tweeted out that he's going to run the table. And of course, he lost in the final because that's what happens when you do stupid things like that. Yeah, Derek pretty much nailed it. Tattoo Artist started the year, I think, 2 for 14. Right, he got really hot in the middle of the year, and I think for me the separators was the Breeders' Crown. If he beats By the Missile in the Breeders' Crown and then just calls it a year, he's got a shot, I think, right? Because then he's got a whole bunch of wins, and including the Pacing Derby and the Breeders' Crown over By the Missile, but he didn't, and he tailed off, and By the Missile finished strongly, and from start to finish, he had the best year for sure. So that he was my vote.
Well, Mark, listening on Facebook, says if anyone picks against Confederate, they should lose their vote. So President Barry and First Vice President Michael, take that into consideration. Mark also says By the Missile is the clear winner in his opinion in this division. Now, Rich has a question for us, and Derek, I'm going to direct this to you because this seems like a you analytics kind of question. So on the 2-year-old colt, we're going back to Captain Albano. Captain Albano was super. He ducked the Metro in favor of Sire Stakes and then got beat as a huge favorite in the Breeders' Crown by a horse that was beat in the Metro, which was by far the key race, as they say, for thoroughbreds. So in Grade 1 races, 0 for 2. In addition, his 149-2 record was from a 2-hole trip at Lexington on a warm day, not a nighttime line. Super horse, but when the money was down, he gets beat by Gem Quality. Who beat who?
I think he makes some fair points, and I don't think it's a slam dunk for any of these horses. Quite frankly, if Captain's Quarters decided to race past the Metro, I might have voted for Captain Quarters, if he had a few more starts. But I don't think you can stop at the Metro, call it a year, and then get the award, unless everyone else is pretty bad. Gem Quality raced well, but in the Metro, where was he? He was 8th. He had his Breeders' Crown win, which certainly boosts up his earnings, but without that one win, his earnings are really low. I felt like Captain Albano was the most consistent overall, and I think that's why he won the award. But certainly, if some of these horses would have done, if Gem Quality would have come back and raced at the Meadowlands in the full Final Four, I think in the Governor's Cup, I think he would have had a legitimate chance and probably would have won if he would have came back and raced in the Governor's Cup. But it's maybe it wasn't that important, or maybe it wasn't eligible too.
I will say, and adding to answer Rich's question partially as well, I feel like, in assembling our group of 5 panelists here, it's not like I knew anybody else's votes. So in some ways, I was kind of surprised we all 5 went for Captain Albano. I figured there would be a Gem Quality vote based on that Breeders' Crown and kind of looking at that same line of thinking that Rich had. So Rich, to answer your question, I suspect that it's not going to be a slam dunk for Captain Albano as maybe us on this panel are thinking. I suspect he probably is going to be the divisional winner, but I suspect there will be some people voting your direction, Rich, there, the line of thinking that you're going for. But to close out the Pacers, we've got the aged mare Pacers, and we've got Grace Hill, who comes in with 10 wins on the year, $570,000. Obviously, Breeders' Crown didn't exactly go her way, but does win the Al-Raj, Dayton Distaff, the Milton. Max Contract wins the Breeders' Crown, finishes 3rd, though, in the FanDuel to Twinbee Joe Fresh. $360,000 on the year with 8 wins for Max Contract. Silver Label makes $460,000 this year with 8 wins, including the Lady Liberty, and finishes 2nd there at a pretty big number in that Breeders' Crown Mares final. So, Mike, another division that I feel like there's directions you could go here.
Yeah, this was a really tough division for me. Grace Hill, I mean, obviously, for Virgil Morgan Jr. is a really, really nice mare, as is Max Contract. But I selected Silver Label in this division. Silver Label winner of the Lady Liberty. did some really nice things up at Woodbine Mohawk Park up at Garnett's neck of the woods. What was unfortunately scratched there towards the end of the season. So she kind of tailed off there towards the end, but that Breeders' Crown effort, wasn't horrible. She was still coming on max contract. And, from a complete season's body of work, I thought, maybe deserved the nod here.
So, Barry, that is a vote for Silver Label. What about for you?
Well, I wish there was more bodies of work for all these pacing aged older mares. In the end, I think that Grace Hill was probably the best out of all of them. What was it? Missed the board once in 15 starts. Again, not a lot of races for these horses, which in some cases a problem, but there's not a lot of them out there that are racing. So, it becomes very difficult. But for me, it was Grace Hill.
All right, Garnett, I have no problem sharing private messages. Michael Carter is out here texting me in the middle of this division. Hey, skip me. I think I screwed up with Silver Label in this division. Skip me.
I don't want to be skipped, but I think I screwed up too now when I look at these horses. There's a mare in here that I have a soft spot for, max contract, because I picked her to win and better in some big, in which she paid big twice, once at 2 and once at 3. And I kind of recency biased her as my vote, but I think, when I take another look at it, Grace Hill, I think, is for sure the most deserving winner. And when you remember the Breeders' Crown night, the front end was not the place to be. And she got stung 25-4, 54-4. Of course, she wasn't going to win off that trip. And then immediately challenged to the 3 quarters. But if you toss that race and the elimination where she clearly was raced very conservatively to make the final, her body of work really stands out to me. And if I could change my vote now, I'd go to Grace Hill, but I can't. So my vote went to max contract.
So, Derek, we have one confident vote for Grace Hill, a very unconfident vote for Silver Label, and a pretty unconfident vote for max contract. But what about for you?
I wouldn't say I love my selection, but I think I made the right one. I went with Grace Hill. She has the most money earned, the most wins, and quite frankly, I feel like if they all show up, in my mind, if they all showed up with their best effort, right, Grace Hill was the best of the group, and that's kind of the way I looked at it for the way this year went. What's nice is that, I'm assuming Silver Label's 4 is still 4, max contract 4. Hopefully we'll see these horses next year. We'll get some new 4-year-olds as well, and we'll have a stronger division next year.
So I'm going to pretty much echo Garnett's sentiments. In hindsight, yeah, so, I kind of had that same soft spot Garnett has when it comes to max contract. We saw those couple of big price wins she's had in the past. I remember watching her kind of grow up there from, those races to Philly to the Meadowlands last year on those daytime cards. She really took big step forward. Obviously, she wins the Breeders' Crown, 3rd there in the FanDuel. So maybe that recency bias towards the end of the year. So I did vote for her. I will stand by that selection. But I do see the strong case we made for Grace Hill for giving that last line. So I could probably be convinced that way now as well, maybe in hindsight, Garnett. But either way, we got 2 votes here for max contract, 2 for Grace Hill, 1 for Silver Label. I suspect all 3 of them will be getting their fair share of votes in this voting process. And let's see. Tough call for Mark Anderson. He'll take max contract too. So that's actually 3 votes here for max contract. And Debbie Little, who's listening in, by the way, we got to get her on one of these panels next year. She's a good Ushwa voter. In fact, she was Ushwin of the Year last year. She wants to know if Barry's the only one on the panel that knows who Captain Albano is actually named after.
Of course we know. Of course I'm old enough to know that, unfortunately.
My father kind of looked a little bit like Captain Albano, so I have a soft spot in my heart for him just because of that. But
did he have the same wardrobe as well?
No, he didn't have the same wardrobe, but he kind of had that kind of beard, though he didn't put the rubber bands in it, and he kind of had that look to him. But one thing I like to think everyone feels the same way and votes the same way, but I don't let my feelings get in the way of my votes. I'm voting who I think is most deserving, regardless of who I like, don't like, what kind of emotional connection I have. I throw that all out the window.
Mike, did you know that the answer to that?
Oh yeah, I know who Captain Albano is. My parents, they used to watch, wrestling and whatnot. So yeah, I knew who Captain
Okay.
Albato was.
I have no clue, so I guess I'm the 23-year-old on the panel. All right, let's flip over to the trot. Let's go to those 2-year-old colt and gelding trotters. And,
Wow.
billed as matchup of the century a couple times this year,
Wow.
and I guess it's going to be at the voting box as well. It's Carl versus TCI. I know plenty of people have very strong opinions on either side of the fence of this one, and for that matter, I don't really know where our panelists ended up pointing their votes to. So, Barry, I guess we'll start with you, and we'll just kind of go from there.
This was without question the toughest division to decide. I mean, you could flip a coin and be right, you know. I went for TCI, and taking nothing away from Carl. I thought that, TCI, won the Mohawk Million after a break, won the Houghton Memorial, won the Wellwood final, won the Pennsylvania Sire Stakes final, and again, taking nothing away from Carl, who is brilliant at the end of the year. I will point out, if you were going to include the kindergarten for Carl, had TCI stayed in training and entered into the kindergarten, it would have knocked Carl out of the kindergarten, because TCI had 2 starts in the kindergarten versus Carl 1. It's very close, but I went for TCI.
Okay, well, that is a TCI vote. I'd like to balance it out with a Carl vote, so I'm going to go to Garnett. I think Garnett's going to give us a Carl vote.
He is. Interesting. The interesting thing about TCI, one of the most interesting things is I help a friend up here with a wife. He does a podcast, a weekly podcast, and I'm kind of his harness content provider. He doesn't follow harness as much as Thoroughbred, but he's sponsored by a bunch of local places that do both, right? Woodbine, Ontario Racing. He's putting together the top races of the year, and I said, for harness racing at Mohawk or in Ontario, it has to be the Mohawk Million. The way TCI made that remarkable recovery to win. They may not have been the strongest field, but it was still pretty amazing, right? That being said, when you consider everything, they faced each other twice. TCI won off a pocket trip in the International Stallion. I'm not sure Carl was at his best at that time. You could argue that, you can argue ifs and buts. If this horse entered, the other one wouldn't be in it. Well, he was, and he jogged from the 10 hole, right, in the kindergarten. And then the exclamation point was the crushing win at the end of the year for me in the Valley Victory, 52-1. So it's close. It's definitely close, but you do get a Carl vote from me.
So, Derek, Debbie Little completely agrees with Barry on TCI, and I know from a phone call with her and Dave Little today, Dave Little's on the other side of that argument, so that's even a husband and wife torn apart from the Carl TCI debate. But, Derek, which side are you going to take?
I hope it ends in a tie. We already had one tie. Hopefully we can get another tie out of this. That would make it interesting. Because I think both horses are really deserving, and it stinks that you got to pick one over the other. I ended up going with Carl. I will say that after the Breeders' Crown, I was on TCI's bandwagon as a winner, even though he didn't win the Breeders' Crown. But the fact that Carl went out and padded his bankroll with a couple more starts, I think, kind of evened up, that category a little bit more. I mean, he finished, TCI still finished a couple 100,000 ahead of him, but, Carl, did some other things better than him, in my opinion. He went a little bit faster. The head-to-head matchup certainly favored Carl. I mean, he lost by a nose and won the other race by open lengths. His Carl's win percentage was a little bit better. I don't know if 90% to 83%, for those who want to, go down to the nitty gritty. I just felt like the 2 times they met up, Carl was the better horse overall. Yes, he lost one, but he lost one by a little bit, and he won one by a lot. And I just had to go Carl's way off of that. Now, if Carl would have stopped after the Breeders' Crown, I would have voted for TCI. So they actually won themselves a vote, for me at least, by coming back and racing in those last, couple of races and picking up those wins and getting those extra earnings, because I thought the earnings differential was too great, to vote for, Carl, unless he got those wins.
So Derek, just play devil's advocate a bit here. So you're saying those last two starts from Carl were kind of key indicators to you, and obviously two back was post 10, an impressive effort there. But how about the fact that he was 1-20 in both of those starts? Doesn't that say something about the quality of who he may have been facing in those last two?
No, because I wasn't voting against Carl, after the Breeders' Crown, because of the fact that, I was voting against him because he didn't have enough money earned, and he went out and he earned the money. He doesn't get to decide who he's going to race against. I didn't stop TCI from racing in those races. He could have showed up. I think they made the right move in stopping with him. But you know what? He's just like TCI got the start in starts that he wanted to start in. Carl started in the starts he wanted to start in. And, they all both ended where they ended, and the earnings ended up where they ended up. Carl made $1 million as a 2-year-old colt trotter. That's not easy to do, and he did it with another horse earning 1.2 million. That just shows you how good of a horse he was.
You got to keep in mind that those two horses were the first two 2-year-old colts to make $1 million. And, you had Snow White, a filly, who made more than they did. So it was a remarkable year for those two horses.
Let's vote for a tie. Rooting for a tie.
Well, Mike, as we go to you, one thing we didn't discuss so far, and this is something Debbie Little and I discussed earlier in discussing this division some more. Mike, what do you make of the class situation? How about the fact that Carl kind of sticks around through Kentucky a little bit, whereas, TCI we see a lot more on the Grand Circuit? I mean, does that edge kind of factor in at all to you, or how did you end up voting, for that matter?
Not really. I mean, listen, TCI raced in the Pennsylvania Sire Stakes, and, Carl raced his, couple of starts over in Kentucky in the Kentucky Sire Stakes. So, I mean, granted, towards the end of the year there, I mean, you see TCI in the William Wellwood, and then again in the Peter Houghton, then back to the Mohawk Million with the International Stallion. To me, that wasn't, I didn't give much weight to that. If we're playing devil's advocate, Barry makes an interesting point about TCI knocking Carl out of the kindergarten. For me, I voted for Carl, but if TCI knocks Carl out of the kindergarten and wins, and then the following week Carl comes back and wins the Valley Victory, then you really got a heck of a vote on your hands. But for me, like everybody else, those two victories right there at the end of the season sealed the deal for me. And, Carl's just a really, really nice, really nice horse, as is TCI. So, like Derek said, let's hope for another tie.
Let me point out that they both had 4 Grand Circuit wins. So it was 4-4 in Grand Circuit wins. So,
I was so high on TCI all year. I think I bet him pretty much every start all season. I mean, I loved him in that first matchup against Carl. I even liked him in the Breeders' Crown, for that matter. Obviously, Carl was much the best. I mean, the Mohawk Million, Garnett mentioned, I mean, that race was just incredible. Go watch that replay. But somehow I was convinced on Carl. And I guess if I'm going to put in one line, I guess it was the Breeders' Crown at the end of the day. I mean, they were essentially in a dead heat. And the first time they met up, the TCI wins by a flared nostril. And, well, in the Breeders' Crown, I think it was very clear Carl was best that night. And, yeah, I suppose the last two starts of the year there could only help to further the case. So I had to go Carl, but man, for as high as I was on TCI all year, it is kind of a weird little flip there for me at the end of the season. But, we might have 4 votes here for Carl, but I suspect this could be a very tight one. And, who knows? Maybe we do get another dead heat. The dead heat Derek referring to, we've had the first announcement of a Dan Patch Award winner, and it was on the human side. The Stan Bergstein Proximity Award last year went to Bulldog Hanover, a horse. We've seen it go to groups and people before. So this year we got both a group and a person. So the Brittany Farms dead heated with Jason Settlemore for the victory there in the Bergstein Award. So congratulate them on the wins, and we'll look forward to hearing the rest of the human awards announcements coming out in press releases in the coming days. And again, obviously Saturday night, we'll find out who these horse winners are, and that will include the 2-year-old filly trotters. And Mike?
Edison, remember, in the 2-year-old colt trot, and I put this on Facebook because I knew it would be interesting for folks, the closest the 2-year-old colt trot was in 2010 when Pastor Stephen defeated Man of Many Missions by 1 vote. So there is some precedence for a tight race.
Oh, I suspect we definitely probably will have a close one, tight race here at the ballot box. And Mark makes a good point, and looking forward to seeing those two race against each other next year as 3-year-olds. So they'll probably have some tight races there as well. But Mike, 2-year-old filly trotters, Soiree Hanover made a break in the Goldsmith Maid last time out, finished second in the Breeders' Crown, but does win the Doherty, does win a Grand Circuit stake down at the Red Mile. Warley Michelle, with the recency bias, wins the Breeders' Crown a limb, wins the Breeders' Crown final. That's kind of the two that I was deciding between for this 2-year-old filly trot division.
Yeah, Warley Michelle, I mean, granted, she won the Breeders' Crown. She just got up by a head in 153-4. I mean, that was a really big effort from both those mares. But my vote here went to Soiree Hanover, a victory in the Jim Doherty, victory in the New Jersey Classic. Was third in the New Jersey Sire Stakes final, going for $240,000. For me, though, the entire year's worth of work goes to Soiree Hanover here for trainer Lucas Wallen.
Derek?
I also went Soiree Hanover. Most money won. Obviously, that goes without saying. For me, I think a big separator for me was that New Jersey Classic. And I know I don't like necessarily to harp on these state bred races, but it was a race where she faced Warrior Michelle, and Warrior Michelle had an inside post, and Soiree Hanover was not way outside, but in the 7, and Soiree Hanover swooped the field and ended up winning that race, and that to me gave her a little bit of an edge over her rival in addition to the earnings. I think she's going to be a reasonably heavy winner here. I don't think she's going to win 90% of the vote, but I think she'll get 70 or 75% of the vote.
Barry, are we getting a Soiree vote from you?
You certainly are, Edison. I think the body of work speaks for itself. The money earnings speak for itself. If you toss out the last, the Breeders' Crown, she won, the Doherty. Again, I'm with Derek. I don't put a lot of weight on the state bred races because the open Grand Circuit races are the ones I think we should focus on the most. And I think Soiree Hanover is clearly the best in this division.
Garnett, 4 for Soiree?
4 for 4, yep. I'm going to give an honorable mention to Willie's home run, tell a 30-second story. So when I was handicapping her debut race for DRF Harness, I always do a little bit of research with first-time starters, of course, and I saw that many of her siblings had won their first race, and I liked her breeding. I liked her qualifier. So I hammered her, and she got a totally conservative drive, of course, and came charging for second at 8-1. And then she proceeded to win 3 golds in a row as the chalk. So, on a much smaller scale, it reminded me of Homer J beating a very, very, very famous horse who only lost once. But yeah, body of work, I think it comes down to Soiree Hanover in this one.
Well, I suppose we all kind of have our own ways of processing through these votings. I'm probably glad I made the decision I did, or I'd be like Mike telling to skip me on this division, telling me to skip me. But I think I actually wrote Warren Michelle in, and then I guess I thought about it a little bit longer. It's like, well, yeah, the Breeders' Crown, the recency, but yeah, then I started thinking about New Jersey Classics, thinking about the whole body of work, and yeah, I think despite the finish of the season Warren Michelle had, Soiree Hanover had to be the choice for me, and Derek's probably in the right realm. I mean, I surely don't think we're looking at a unanimous winner or anything, but I suspect Soiree will probably take care of her business in this division. 3-year-old colt and gelding trotter, tactical approach, probably the one to knock off here. 1.5 million, 10 wins on the year. Kentucky Futurity, the Hamiltonian, the Breeders' Crown winner, did finish second in the FanDuel to an older horse. So tactical approach. Michael Carter, I suspect maybe wins this division for you, and who knows, maybe more.
Well, listen, to me, there's no question who wins this division. It's not even close. Tactical approach for me is 100%, the vote getter here. I mean, put together such an impressive season, $1.5 million made, and was second in the FanDuel Championship to Southwind Tyrion. And, we'll argue about my choice for tactical approach a little bit later on. But this, for me anyway, is is by far the 3-year-old colt trotter of the year.
Barry, any disagreement from you?
Not in the least. I mean, tactical approach, I mean, is remarkable. Had a remarkable season. Hambletonian, Kentucky futurity. Hard to make a case for any other horse.
Derek?
He's honestly a much better horse than I thought he was early in the season. Even after he won the Hambletonian, I really wasn't sold on him until about Kentucky, and then he put in those two big performances in Kentucky, and quite frankly, there is no logical reason anyone can give me how they can vote for any other horse but tactical approach in this division. There's just none.
Well, Garnett may offer one, or is he going tactical approach?
No, I'm not going to offer one. But what a year for Nancy Tactor, right? She only had 2 tactical landings, and one's Carl and one's tactical approach. Of course, her father Jimmy took over tactical landings, training at 3 because he couldn't trot at 2, and he proceeded to make $800,000, finished 3rd in the Hambo, won the Breeders' Crown, and I'm pretty sure her family owns a good chunk of tactical landing. So just a phenomenal year for her, going 2 for 2 with these great horses, right? And you can't make a case against them in this division.
Yeah, of course, Nancy Tactor and Scott Ziron both having big years. Scott Ziron up for driver of the year. Maybe a discussion we'll get into a little bit if we have a couple moments at the end. But let's go to the 3-year-old filly trotters. Barry, we'll start with you here. Bond wins the Breeders' Crown Final, finishes 2nd in the FanDuel to an older filly. Heaven Hanover wins the Hambletonian Oaks Special Way. Gosh, she was really considered the top of this division early on after the year that she had. Obviously, things didn't pan out completely for her with an injury in the middle of the season. Mamma Mia Volo, another one that maybe didn't pan out as people would have expected, especially those breaks in the last 2 starts. But for me, I thought Bond was the clear choice. But Barry, is that the way you went or a different direction?
Hey, I think you summed it up for me, as I would have said. Special Way we thought was very, very special in the beginning of the year. Heaven Hanover came in the middle, but overall, you'd be hard pressed to go against Bond, in my opinion.
Yeah, Garnett, I guess to sum up what I was saying there, I feel like this is a division that had promise to be very, very competitive, but in the end, I think Bond just kind of asserted her dominance.
Yeah, I think Special Way had some issues along the way. I mean, she's still a special filly, but Bond was just really good. And watching her race, when she was good, she was really good. Like even, talk about elimination races or whatever, but even her Breeders' Crown elimination, she was raging with trot the whole way. You could tell when he moved her, she was going to jog, right? And, she's just overall, she had the best year. It's very, very hard to make a case to vote for another one in this division.
Derek, another Bond vote?
Yeah, it's not really close. She dominated in earnings. It's an of the year award, and she had the best year start to finish. She was the most consistent, by far, and obviously won a bunch of stakes. It's amazing that she's going to win this award, and I think win this award handily. And she didn't win the Kentucky Filly Futurity. She didn't win the Hambletonian Oaks, and those are 2 of the most prestigious races in her division. And she's not going to win either of them, but she's going to win this award.
All right, Mike, give us the Rose Run Yolanda vote for your local Ohio connections.
I did. I voted. No, I'm just kidding. I voted for Bond. Bond, by far the best 3-year-old filly trotter out there. The open trotting ranks this year for the fillies and mares, I mean, was a pretty solid one. I mean, you had MM's Dream, Jiggy Jog, and Bond did not embarrass herself even a little bit. So, the fact that she was able to finish 2nd, only beaten 2 lengths, is a testament to how good she is. And Bond was the player for me.
Derek? Oh, no, we already went to Derek. Never mind. We'll go to Mark next. We'll read some Facebook comments. He says Soiree, tactical, Bond, easily. And, it's clearly the way our panel has it. Derek, you want to give another vote for Bond or go back somewhere else if I'm throwing it to you again?
Yeah, I still go for Bond. I'm going to stick with her.
Mike, if I give you a second vote, will you then go to Rose Run Yolanda? Still Bond?
Yeah, what the heck? You know what? Just so somebody else gets a vote. What the heck? We'll go with Rose Run Yolanda a second time around.
Well, let's go to the age trotter ranks. And Garnett, we'll start with you because I know how much you love El Raja 1. I'm not sure if you could go that direction this year. We'll find out, though, from you. But it's Academic, a near millionaire this year. A lot of wins for him. Southwind Tyrion, maybe this is the real test of that recency bias. How good was he in the Breeders' Crown and the FanDuel?
Yeah, I can't go to El Raja 1 IT, unfortunately, because something went wrong with him at the end of the year. He didn't look right on the track. He looked kind of rough, especially in the Breeders' Crown and the FanDuel, and he eventually broke in the FanDuel. He really didn't look good in that race at all at any point on the track. But when he is 100% right, he is by far the best trotter in this division. But that's not what we're voting for, right? I did go to a bit of a recency bias with Southwind Tyrion. I thought he was just really, really good in his last 4 starts. I can see how It's Academic is probably going to get a lot of votes. He might even win. I might have went with the wrong horse here, but that's how my vote went.
Mike, recency bias or It's Academic or someone else?
For me, it's the recency bias. Derek, you and I both were at Yonkers International Trot Day. And, while he wasn't the best in the Robert McCuda trot, I would have loved to seen him, take on some of those horses in the $1 million Yonkers International Trot. But, listen, after that, I mean, he finished 5th. He came to shipped to Ohio, finished 5th, only beaten 2 lengths behind Hill Exotic and El Raja 1. Then El Raja 1 beat him only a length and a quarter in the Al Raj. And then, he lost as the favorite in the Breeders' Crown elimination before. Just an absolutely powerful performance in that Breeders' Crown final. And then, of course, coming back to win the FanDuel championships. He's had a stellar season and to me deserves the honors here.
Barry, are you also going to follow the recency bias?
No, I'm going for the It's Academic bias. I think overall, consistent over the entire year, the most money earned. You can make a case for other horses, but in my opinion, It's Academic.
All right, Derek, are we going to go 3-1 Southland Tyrion, or are we going to tie this up at 2-2?
2-2. 2-2. You don't get to show up at the end of the year, win 2 races, and get an award from me. It's just not the way it works in my world. With these horses race, from let's say April through the end of November, and you got to show up, more than 2 starts to win an award. Do I think he's the best trotter at the end of the year? Absolutely. Southwind Tyrion was the best trotter at the end of the year, but he didn't win any stakes before the end of the year, and It's Academic won 4 stakes races. He was consistent throughout the year. Even at the end of the year, when he wasn't on the top of his game, it's not like he's, finishing up the track somewhere. He was second in the Breeders' Crown, put in a solid effort. He beat him in earnings by 300,000. I think it's pretty clear that It's Academic deserves the award, but I understand that, we live in a what have you done for me lately world.
This is another division. I'm very confident. I typed the words It's Academic on that ballot and then changed them to Southwind Tyrion. And now looking back on it, I'm finding it a little tougher to justify. But again, I'll stand by the choice. I don't know. The recency bias was huge there, obviously. We saw the Breeders' Crown. We saw the FanDuel. We know what Southwind Tyrion's done recently. But, It's Academic. Obviously just a huge year. Wins Cedars Trotting Classic, wins the Cashman. Again, 8 wins on the season. Nearly 300,000 more than Southwind Tyrion. So, I don't know. I think this is another difficult division, and that's only because of Southwind Tyrion making his last 2 starts. I mean, if you kind of flip it and Southwind Tyrion wins, say, the Cashman and is dominant through the middle of the year Cedars Trotting Classic, there's probably no question it goes to It's Academic. So, this will really be one of the divisions that'll test how strong voters are willing, of us voters, willing to use that recency bias to determine these award winners. And the Breeders' Crown, too, is a big metric because Derek, I think it's fair to say if it's not the Breeders' Crown win for Southwind Tyrion, if it's, say, the FanDuel and, the Dayton Derby or something, it's probably not enough, right? Like, the Breeders' Crown had to be one of those 2 wins at the end.
Yeah, obviously, for him to have a chance, he had to have the Breeders' Crown as one of those wins. And quite frankly, if you look at It's Academic's lines, if you go back to that the Cedars Trotting Classic, if he doesn't win that race, he don't get my vote, quite frankly, because he wouldn't have won a race going back into the beginning of August. You can't go that long and not win a race and still win it. But he was able to pick up that Hoosiers Trotting Classic at the end of September. And to me, that made a big difference for me in my voting.
Well, Mark says Southwind Tyrion. Sally says it's academics. There's even a couple more differing opinions from our Facebook commenters. So that could be another very interesting division to pay attention to in this awards announcement Saturday. But the last division for us to discuss, the aged mare trotters. And Barry, for this one, Jiggy Jog versus Dreams. They had some good battles throughout the year, but I personally, in my vote, felt that Jiggy Jog took care of business when it counted.
I agree. I think Jiggy Jogs in this division. Um, won the Breeders' Crown, won the FanDuel, was second in the International, second in the Hambo Maturity. I mean, was there all the time. 8 wins, 3 seconds, and 11 starts, $1 million. You can't ask for very much more.
Mike, I'm probably biased too for my European travels and work this year, but I think quite a lot of the international horses. So for Jiggy Jog to perform what she did against them in the international that you called there at Yonkers, that too was, as if she needed any more help to get the vote for me. That was a pretty big race to me, even though she didn't win it.
Listen, it was by far the funnest day I think I've ever had announcing races. And, she was very, very impressive in the Yonkers International Trot. I mean, they were never getting to Vivid Wise Oz, who was much the best that day. And what's more impressive about Jiggy Jog is, she took almost a month off after the Hambletonian Maturity, almost a month off after the Steel, and then just really rallied with some nice performances. And, she's just not one of those horses that can, race week in and week out. And that was clearly proven throughout the season. But she, the time off didn't seem to hurt her. And she put together a really solid season, earning over $1 million this year.
Garnett, Mark says, Jiggy Jog, no debates. You better not have any debate.
No, it's clear cut. I'll throw in one more stat. She's only the second trotting mare in history to have $1 million season. Who's the first? Is going to tell me who the first one was?
Peace Corps?
Nope. More recent, and probably when purses are a bit higher.
Bunny Lake?
Hanover?
Yes. Only took 3 guesses. That's pretty good.
Bunny
Bunny Lake's a pacer, Mike.
We can always
I only had one guess.
Bunny Lake's a pacer.
Oh, my bad.
Derek, hopefully no debate from you either. Jiggy Jog?
Yeah, there's no question. Jiggy Jog is going to destroy. Eminem's Dream had a wonderful season, but there's no doubt that Jiggy Jog is the best older trotting man.
Yeah, I was going to say, we should like, people hopefully look at the past performances like we do and look at these horses. Like, I like how we're debating and saying, like, Jiggy Jog clearly, and she clearly will win the award, but like, if you told me I could own MM's Dream, have 7 wins on the year, nearly 600,000, like we're saying this like she's like a non-winners of one horse that won like 5,000 or something this year. So I think there's a lot of very, very good seasons from horses. But for the divisional honor, we'll go Jiggy Jog on this panel, and we will now roll through some of the broader awards. Pacer of the year, Derek. This might be a quick round the table discussion. Confederate. Garnett.
Confederate.
Mike.
Confederate.
Barry.
Confederate.
Well, might be quite fully unanimous like Bulldog was last year, which Derek's got his Bulldog shirt on there, but we will go unanimously Confederate. Now, Trotter of the Year, I don't know. I suppose Jiggy Jog versus Tactical Approach. Mike, we know you're on Tactical Approach's bandwagon. Derek?
There's no way Tactical Approach is losing. I mean, I think other horses will get some votes, but he's not losing.
Okay, Garnett?
Agreed. He shouldn't lose. I couldn't see him losing. It's going to come down to him and Confederate for Horse of the Year, right?
Barry, Tactical Approach?
Tactical Approach.
Well, I am as well, so we're unanimous on Pacer and Trotter of the Year. Now, Horse of the Year, well, I suspect there's going to be 4 votes for Confederate, 1 for Tactical Approach. Derek, I guess we'll start with you. You can make the Confederate appeal.
I mean, look, when I first saw that Michael picked Tactical Approach, I was a little taken aback, and I went and I looked at the statistics and I looked at everything, and you know what? It's not the craziest vote I've ever seen. I've seen people vote for a lot stranger horses than that. I think he's certainly a deserving horse. I think that Confederate's body of work from start to finish was a little bit better than him. I think Confederate, I think, did things on the track that, made you say, hey, I want to go see Confederate. I don't know if I felt the same way about Tactical Approach, even though he had a great season. I think that Confederate is clearly going to win this award, though clearly he will not be unanimous.
Well, I guess I shouldn't presume I know where the vote's going. So, Garnett, is it a vote for Confederate?
Yeah. When you look at Confederate's body of work, I mean, he's got the one loss against age horses, and he probably should have won the North America Cup, right? He just got out tripped. You can't give it to a horse who has 9 losses over him. I just can't fathom that, making that decision myself.
Barry, Confederate vote?
In my mind, no question.
I would agree with that. Again, for as much as I like to knock Confederate over the year, I think he's got to be the horse of the year. But all right, Michael, give us the speech, give us the appeal that none of us are going to listen to or respect, but give us Tactical Approach horse of the year.
Well, listen, here's the deal, okay? Tactical Approach made about $100,000 less than Confederate throughout the year, okay? So if you're looking at money earned, yes, Confederate won. However, Tactical Approach danced all the big dances, won a lot of the major dances. He won the Hamiltonian final, was a winner, or excuse me, was fourth at the Kentucky Sire Stakes final, then came right back and won the Bluegrass before winning the Kentucky Futurity. For me, finishing second in the FanDuel Championship, to me, gives him the slight edge over, say, Confederate, who, listen, Confederate deserves Horse of the Year. It's not, to me, these two both deserve Horse of the Year honors, but the horses the Tactical Approach beat in that FanDuel Championship, to me, gives him a nod over Confederate. And, like Derek said, it's not like I'm voting for, Bond or, some crazy horse in this field, right? In this discussion, right? It's, two solid horses. Clearly both are deserving, but to me, it's Tactical Approach.
Well, that's a look at the Human Awards. 12 divisional honorees will be announced this Saturday at the Meadowlands. The Pacer, Trotter, and Horse of the Year will be announced at the Dan Patch Awards Banquet in Florida in February. But before we wrap up here, let's discuss 2 Human Awards. They're related, of course, to our Horse Awards here. Driver of the Year, Trainer of the Year. Garnett, let's start with you. Give us both your votes and talk to us about them. For Trainer of the Year, the nominees are Okas Fonstead, Ron Burke, and Sean Stacy. And for Driver of the Year, it's Yannick Gingras or Scott Zeron.
I went with Fonstead. He's just got so many good horses that perform well all year long. He just seems so stacked, his barn, all year long, but I could see making cases for the others. For Driver of the Year, if Scott Zeron doesn't win it this year, when can he win? Honestly, if he doesn't win it this year, when can he win? Because in most years, he's never going to have the same gaudy stats as a guy like Gingras or T-Trick. But, man, he won almost every big race, right? So I think it's got to be Scotty this year, the money man.
Barry, what about your 2 votes?
I agree about Scotty. He did some impossible things and got lucky in a couple of situations. That's fine. That's what driving is all about. You got to get lucky sometimes. But he had a great season. Aki reminds me of the Alabama Crimson Tide. They just have so many 5-star athletes that if one, doesn't make it, it's the next one in. And that's the way Aki's barn is. I mean, I don't know how many different stake winners he had this year, but it was remarkable. So it's Aki and Scott for me.
All right, identical votes from Barry. Mark on Facebook is contributing Scott Zeron and Okas Fonstead. Derek, we can get any dissent from you?
You're going to get some dissent from me. I voted for Aki. I think he had a deserving season. Quite frankly, I think he should have won the award last year. And that kind of goes into how I voted for Driver of the Year, because last year I voted for Aki for Trainer of the Year, and Jim Campbell won because he had those 2 big wins. And this year, and obviously, Jim won. That's the way the vote went. And this year, the same thing's going to happen on the driver. Scotty's clearly going to win in a landslide. I voted for Yannick. And because the numbers are what the numbers are. And Yannick won $5 million more, and his win percentage was 7 points higher, 21% versus 14%. And I love Scotty. I think, this is probably, it's he's going to need a lot to go right, in other years in his career, and he certainly can. He's a young guy, to win the award again, and certainly a lot went right from here. But 14% just isn't high enough for me to vote for him to win an award. I just couldn't do it, or if the money was closer, maybe, but it's just, I don't know. I couldn't get over the statistics hump to vote for him. And though I do think he's going to win easily. So it's a win-win for me. I voted for the guy who I think had the better numbers, and Scotty ends up winning anyway.
Hey, Garnett, Debbie Little's chiming in late on this topic, but if Tactical Approach had won the FanDuel, it could have been a discussion. Now, that's interesting. Would you have considered at all Tactical Approach over Confederate for Horse of the Year if he wins the FanDuel? Because then he beats older horses in the FanDuel, but Confederate loses pretty badly to older horses in the FanDuel.
No, I would not.
Okay, well, Mike.
You still got 9 losses. You still got the 9 losses, right? I can't. Has a horse ever won a year with 9 losses?
You'd have 8 losses then.
I don't know. I just can't get past that when I want to.
It wouldn't have changed my mind either. I really feel like that race that Confederate was in the FanDuel, it was an impossible spot. There was no way he can win that race in my mind. So much. I mean, I certainly picked against him. I didn't think he had any chance. That racing from post 9 against those horses was just too difficult. And, Tactical Approach had an easier spot to deal with.
Yeah, and you got a good trip, right?
Mike, you're either rebuttal to that, your driver of the year, trainer of the year, whatever you want to give us.
I'll give a rebuttal in a minute, but trainer of the year for me was Ron Burke, and driver of the year was Scott Zeron. I mean, Scott just had an amazing season. Although Derek brings up some really interesting points, from a percentage factor. If you're looking at an entire body of work, instead of the kind of them winning major, just major stakes or what have you. So, but for me, it was Scotty and Ron. And for me, if Tactical Approach wins the FanDuel, I'm not sure. Well, I won't say that, but if he wins, it's still a complete lock for me, obviously.
Let me say one more thing before you move on Ron Burke, because it goes to show you, like, what does this guy have to do to win an award kind of thing? Because Aki's probably going to win here. The guy right now has 1,155 wins, right? He eclipsed his old record by over 60 wins already. He's going to come close to 1,200 wins in a season. It's just unbelievable.
It's amazing, isn't it?
So driver of the year, to be fair, I looked at the same statistics Derek did, and it probably almost should have put me on the Yannick bandwagon for this award. He was the leading Grand Circuit driver, obviously everything he did this year, but I guess it was just the flashy wins. Whenever I'm thinking when the big money was down this year, be it the Adios, be it the North America Cup, be it the Jugette and the Jug, I mean, it just seems like Scott was always in that winner's circle. So I did have to go with Scott Zeron in the end, but yeah, I agree with what Derek said in the sense that I think Scott's going to win it, but he's going to win it by a larger margin than he probably should, if that makes sense. I'd agree with that. Trainer of the year, again, probably my bias being in Europe and hearing it for days on end at Solvala, but it's Man in Green, Mean Machine, King O'Cobb. But what I will say is in the opening line to his bio, his nomination bio, I think really sums up why I voted this way. For Oka, his $9.83 million in purses is the 20th highest total ever, exceeded only by seasons by Ron Burke, Jimmy Takter, and Mickey Burke. But Svansted's 594 starts in 2023 are the fewest by at least 135 of anyone ahead of him on the historical list. I mean, obviously the operation Ron runs is incredible. And Debbie Little said it, Ron Burke win trainer of the year every year. That's probably a true fact. But just considering that opening paragraph and what Oka did this year, I think is really, really incredible. And as the good Alabama Crimson Tide football fan I am, if Barry's comparing Oka to Alabama football, that's even more reason we're going that way.
Here's a question, and I don't know the answer to it. Has any driver ever won the North America Cup, the Hamiltonian, the Jug, and the Jugette in the same year?
I think the Jug and Jugette double isn't really done that often, so throw in the other two. I would say probably not.
That's part of the reason why I didn't even look at statistics when I made this vote.
So anyway, so Debbie says Ron could win trainer of the year every year. Sally says Ron breeds, trains babies, and racehorses. What more can he do? Mark says trainer of the year is debatable, but Scott has to be driver of the year, doesn't he? So some of our thoughts from the Facebook people. And the only other human award I'll mention briefly myself here for a minute is, of course, the Breakthrough Award winner, which, hey, Michael Carter's won that award before. I just won it last year, so looking forward to pass that torch on to somebody. And we got 3 very deserving candidates. Mark McKelvey, good friend up at Wood by Mohawk, obviously a lot of the great work he does. Jessica Howlett, nominated not only for this award, but also for the Unsung Hero Award. That Pompano book she put together looks absolutely incredible. Obviously, what she did for the Tioga Horsemen through their tragedy, also just admirable work. And Jacob Reinheimer, who has really broken through out there at Hoosier Park, obviously a vital part of their broadcasts. And he has been on the show several times as well in several of these roundtables. So my best wishes to the 3 candidates for the Breakthrough Award winner, and look forward to seeing in Florida at the end of the end of February who will take that torch for me as the Breakthrough Award winner. But before we wrap up here, Barry, I'll throw it back to you. Speaking of Florida, end of the year, usharnesswriters.com for information, but to give a little bit of a rundown for our listeners out there about maybe just USHWA in general, obviously what we do, as well as the awards banquet coming up in Florida and Orlando in February.
Absolutely. The awards banquet, Sunday, February 25th at the Rosen Center in Orlando, Florida. If you go to US Harness Rider, harnesswriters.com, all the information about the rooms, tickets, ads, sponsorships, it's all there. The Harness Writers, does a great deal of good things and important things for the industry. We nominate and vote on the Living Hall of Fame and the Communicators Hall of Fame. We nominate for the Horses of the Year and the Divisional Honors and all the Human Awards. Something that Garnett is involved in, the Clyde Hurt Workshop, which is a very important part and, is the springboard to some people getting a chance to really see what journalism is like, sports journalism in particular, and hopefully harness racing journalism in particular. Those are the things we do. We're proud of our work. And that's really all I have to say about it. I'm proud to have served as president of the Harness Writers, and look forward to the banquet in Orlando in February.
Well, first Vice President Michael Carter, what do you have to follow that up with? Hopefully you're joining us this year. Wasn't it last year you missed the awards banquet?
I did. We had something a little more important going on. Our daughter was being born last year, and Barry and I had a brief discussion a few weeks back about when the awards banquet should be, and he obliged that it should be after our daughter's birthday. So I appreciate that. No, I'm kidding.
I thought you were told us you had another baby coming in February.
Yeah, no babies coming in February.
I liked it, Michael. During the membership meeting last year, it was the most succinct comment you've ever had. Just let's read this letter, Jerry Connors. Let's read this letter from Michael Carter. Oh, sorry, can't be here, baby born. Oh, wow, that was best speech ever from Michael Carter.
Yeah, it's listen, I tried to tell a joke during my Breakthrough Award speech, and it wasn't very good. I think Derek Givner might have been the only one laughing at me that year, but we won't dive into that. Here's the deal. I'm very excited to be back. I missed being there last year. It's a fun time to get with everybody, follow up with people and make a lot of connections. And, if you're in the harness racing sport, it's a good time to come down and enjoy, a little bit of time off, but to connect with people that you may not get to see on a regular basis. And, I'm anxious to get down there. It's going to be fun, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, Garnett, Barry was talking about it. We'll chat a little bit more about something you and I are both advisors for, the Clyde Hurt Journalism Workshop. The 2 greatest things ever for me this year's workshop were, first of all, finally getting to sit behind a horse, thanks to Ray Schnick for his barn. I was just talking to him about that at the Monticello Goshen USHWA Chapter Awards a couple weeks ago. And, obviously we went to New York Giants training camps with the kids on Friday morning. And, Deontay Banks, every time I see him, I say, oh, wow, University of Maryland guy. He was great. He talked to our students. Brian Dable, anytime I see him on the sidelines, great head coach, great time he spent with our students the last couple of years. So that's a lot of fun for the kids. And obviously, Garnett, a lot of fun for us, too, to be advisors.
Absolutely, and it's a very, very busy week. We cram a lot in so they can learn. They have to learn fast. My son Nick was there and did a great job of kind of taking him through race replays and what to watch for in the terminology, and not saying horses run, and don't ask if a horse is going to run in the Kentucky Derby after winning the Hambletonian, all that kind of stuff. But I think we had it in the right sequence, because the very first morning of the workshop, we drove out to Goshen, pulled into Ray Schnicker's, and said. They pulled out the double jogging cart, and we said, "Who's going first?" And they're like, "We're going what?" Right? And so they got an education right away by sitting behind a horse before they learned anything else. And it's always great. It's always a lot of fun. Hambletonian week, so much fun, and the afternoon of the Hambletonian is the best racing in North America, in my opinion.
Garnett, will we see you in Florida this year?
You won't. I won't be making it to Florida. I wish I could, but hopefully another time.
Derek, we'll see you down there again this year, right?
I'll be there on Sunday morning for the meeting and Sunday night for the dinner. That's about it. You get me for one full day. But
oh man, come on, Derek. Last year, everybody was in the Oshawa Hospitality Suite, focusing on their drinks on Saturday night. And you were the one coming up to me saying, "Oh, look, Meadowlands 11th race. Let's bet this."
Well, listen, I'm not saying I won't be there on Saturday night in the hotel. I may or may not. I haven't decided my plans yet as to where I'm going to be. I'm not serving as director this year, so I don't have to be there earlier on Saturday. So, but I'm certain I'll be in the Orlando area by then, and we'll see what happens. Maybe come hang out or whatever. I serve on enough committees. I don't need to do everything.
All right,
I'll
Derek.
say that.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
Well, no, it's okay. I'll say this. Derek's got a family, and I've sort of copied Derek over the past couple of years. We use this as kind of our vacation time for our family following the dam patch. Orlando's a beautiful area, and Derek, I don't know if you're sticking around the following week, but I know we are.
No, odds are I will come down to Florida. The week, the beginning of that week. So I'll be in Florida probably Monday or Tuesday. It's just a matter of when I'm going to go to Orlando and when I'm going to be in town for that, because like I said, I don't need to be there till Sunday. So
yeah, that's what I did last year. It was a lovely trip. But Derek, last word before we wrap up this show, and we're going to finish in the Money Media's harness content for 2023 by bashing the person we love to bash most, Ray Catolo. 5 years ago, the U.S. Harness Racing Association, we award him the Breakthrough Award, and he doesn't even show up.
Yeah, you know what? To me, he should never get another award again for the rest of his life. You're automatically banned. You don't show up. I don't care. He said he was sick. He has all these excuses. Blah, 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 blah. I don't care. You win an award. You suck it up, and you show up.
He's too busy making those horse racing nation videos with oranges, picking winners.
I'm watching my phone. I know he's going to text me soon and give the "I was sick. I was truly sick." But you know what? Given that White Castle and all this junk food he eats, he probably was really sick off of something he eats. But anyway, Barry Lefkowitz, Michael Carter, Garnett Barnsdale, Derek Givner, thank you all for joining us so much. I'm Edison Hatter. Thanks, as always, to everybody out there for tuning into the special In the Money Media podcast promoting the 2024 Dan Patch Awards coming up in February down in Orlando, Florida, presented by Caesars Entertainment. Again, it's Sunday, February 25th. USHarnessWriters.com. You can get all the information there. And Mark's Facebook comment wraps it up well. Great show, guys. Let's have a great 2024 racing season. Hopefully everyone out there does. And we'll wish everybody a happy early 2024.
Thank you.